Hey there. Oh my goodness. Today is going to be a really exciting conversation. Let me just make sure I am live on all the right places. Okay, here we are. So today we are talking about how to stop playing small. I love this topic. I did an episode of Love, Happiness, and Success. The podcast and video came out on Monday. And in that, I did a pretty deep dive into why this happens, why we have a tendency to put ourselves down, right? Diminish ourselves, make ourselves seem smaller than we actually are. I talked about how this can show up in a lot of different ways. It could be, not telling people about the amazing things that you're doing, finding it very hard to take a compliment. If something says somebody nice to you, you immediately turn that into, now I got it at a thrift store, like whatever it is. But also, talking about how on a deeper level, this tendency to play ourselves down, put ourselves down, play small can really become internalized. So it becomes not just about how we show up with other people in the world. It also turns into this tendency to start limiting ourselves in terms of what we believe we're capable of, what we can believe that we can do. And so that's why it's really important to be aware that this is even an issue in the first place, because sometimes it is fairly subconscious, but also thinking about so what do we need to do to change this and make it okay to be actually amazing. So on today's live stream, we're going to be doing a few different things. And truly, first and foremost, I am here to talk to you and answer your questions. I mean, if this has been a struggle for you, and just transparently, this has been a struggle for me. I'm still working on it, right? So, but I have been working on it. I work with clients on this topic and would love to hear what's going on with you. So if you're on a quest, maybe to feel more confident or, start to get comfier with taking up some space, maybe having it okay to make other people feel less comfy sometimes is something that you're working on. Being able to set healthy boundaries can be part of this, but feeling, I think, empowered, feeling like you trust yourself, like it all kind of sticks together with this topic of playing small, really appreciating ourselves for being as amazing as we are. So we're going to spend our time on a few different things. I'm going to do just a super quick recap of some of the ideas that I talked about on the podcast on Monday, just in case you didn't catch it, so that you know, okay, here's what's going on with this tendency to play small. So we are going to talk first about why this happens, why I think we all can be vulnerable to doing this. It's like whatever the opposite of narcissism is, we have that. And that's also, pros and cons, can be a little bit problematic, but we'll talk about why this happens. And then also going to be just sharing some general tips, like things that we can all be thinking about and doing that can help you feel more confident and less diminishing yourself. But then really, as I mentioned, I am here for you. I want to hear your questions. And so if you have questions for me, you can just drop them right here in the comments and we'll chat about them live, which is fantastic, because I've noticed that on these live streams, a lot of times somebody will ask a question, and I need more information, right? And so to be able to have a little bit of a back and forth and get some more detail can be super helpful. And I know just from feedback that we're talking about fairly personal things here on this live stream. And so if you would rather not do that in a public forum like social media, nobody would blame you. You can also submit questions to me through this link right here. It's just growingself.com, dear-Lisa. I'll set this up. I put together it's almost a little chat bot on my website that you can interact with. submit your question through that, and then it'll pop up right in front of me while I'm sitting over here, and we can still actually have a little bit of a back and forth if you'd like to do that. Okay. And then so lastly, at the end of this, I also am very pleased to let you know that I have some free resources that I think will really, really help you. So we'll talk about this today, answer your questions, but then I'm going to load you up with some free resources and other things that you can do after this live stream in order to support your growth. Okay, so that is what we're doing. And first of all, thank you for joining me. And let's just check in really quick. Like, is it just me that does this? I mean, can anybody else relate to what I'm saying? I can see a bunch of you out here, and hello, and thanks for joining me. But so what does playing small look like in your life a little bit? Like, is it, kind of getting uncomfortable when somebody pays you a compliment? Is it feeling like you need to hide things that you are doing that are objectively awesome? Like if you have accomplishments or achievements or you're doing something really cool, like do you feel a little bit weird about telling people that? Would you rather hide it because maybe you're worried about what they would think? Maybe they're not doing things that are quite as awesome as you are, and you're like, oh, I don't want to tell them that because, are they going to think that I'm like bragging or fluffing myself up, or is it going to make them feel bad about themselves? If I actually talk about how incredible I really am, does it look like that in your life? Or, sometimes I think this can look like really just downplaying our own achievements. But I think that a piece of it here is actually attached to people pleasing. Like when you have a pattern of kind of like managing other people's emotions or like feeling responsible for other people's emotions, it's very easy to go into a situation where like you are putting other people's feelings before your own. You are putting their comfort before your own. And sometimes in a way that can really be problematic for you. Like I see this a lot when people might struggle to set boundaries related to this. Like they feel guilty when they need to do that, or they will feel guilty if they need to ask somebody else for something, right? So these can all be different pieces of this puzzle, but can anybody relate to this? Just me? I'd love to hear what this is like in your world. But I know, like, for me personally, I still struggle with taking compliments, to be completely honest with you. And I think, too, for me, what I have noticed, and this is getting better, I think. Let's see, Emily. Feel like comparing where I am in life to others, and that your inner voice has a tendency to make you feel small, plagued by the shoulds. Yeah. The shoulds. I totally hear that. That happens to me too. And Becca shared, for her, it looks like you can't stand up for yourself. Opinions are not, or your opinions, not being able to ask for what you want or need for fear of being needy or a burden. Yes, that is exactly what we're talking about. I still struggle with that. And you know what I will say, and this is something I think through my own work, I've been able to like reframe a little bit. I do think that in some ways, naturally strong, competent people who are really capable of a lot will also tend to do that. Like, because we can do a lot of things, we'll often like heap more stuff on ourselves. Like, it's fine. And then it's not fine. Do you know what I mean? And so I do think that can be a part of that. But yeah, definitely. And I don't know if you guys can relate, but like, too, I think something that has happened to me, this is awesome. Playing small during conflict, letting things go even when I'm still upset in order to keep the peace. I do that too. Yeah. I'm getting better at it, and and as we talk a lot about on this podcast, I mean, like a lot about healthy relationships and how to do that well. And I think we can absolutely, swing that pendulum in the other direction. I mean, there's people who get very bent out of shape about lots of things and are very vocal in expressing that. And, that comes with its own set of issues. But, yeah, there's this real tendency in like, no, I'm fine, and just like being small, putting away your feelings in order to let somebody else let it go, let somebody else win, right? Keep the peace. And there's a time and place for that, but it can be really detrimental to relationships, but also to ourselves. And I think for me, it's been interesting too, like even probably over the last, I would say 10 years or so, like it's getting better. But to this day, I will still, especially like with people that I don't know very well, be very, very quiet about like who I am, what I do. And this is especially true like in social situations. But honestly, like even I have been at business networking events with people who are very accomplished. I mean, who are doing lots of cool things. And like if looking at my stuff on paper, like I've done some pretty cool things. Like I've written a book, I have a doctorate, I've wrote a business, like podcast, all this stuff. And I won't even mention it. Like I have literally been at like a business networking dinner and I am talking to other people and asking them questions about what they do. And at the end of it, they're like, what do you do anyway? And I'll tell them and they're like, you should lead with that next time. And like, yeah. And it's like still something that I'm working on. So anyway, we are on this journey together, my friends. So to talk a little bit more about this before we kind of jump into questions and things. And oh, I just saw my hair. Excuse me. We're actually going out of town on vacation tomorrow. And I think I'm already in vacation mode a little bit. So, okay. So first of all, just to like normalize all of this, there are good reasons why we tend to do this. Oh, wait a minute. You guys, I just did this. I literally just did this to myself. I need to introduce myself. Oh my God. Okay, here we go. I am Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby, if you haven't caught this before. I am a licensed psychologist, a licensed marriage and family therapist, a board certified coach. I'm the founder of Growing Self-Counseling and Coaching, the author of Xoxo, Breaking Your Addiction to Your Ex-Love. And I am so happy to be here with you today talking about your questions on this live stream. But do you see what just happened? Like we jumped in, started talking together, and like did not even occur to me that I should introduce myself and mention the fact of like, why I have the right to be here. So anyway, we are all a work in progress, aren't we, my friends? Okay, so going back to the why we do this. Oh my gosh. There are a lot of different reasons. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Wayne, your kind comments. That's so nice. But I mean, I do. I think that we all do. And this has a lot of reasons why we do this. And these reasons often have deep roots. I think that for many of us, growing up in environments where there was a lot of criticism can definitely be a thing. I mean, I had have a father with very high standards. And so, like it kind of never quite good enough sort of thing. And so I think that can be one reason. I think that also it can be hard for us to put ourselves out there because, I think a big piece of it, and this again, subconscious, but like a fear of rejection, like if we put ourselves out there in a way that is like, I'm pretty cool, I mean, like, even if you do that in like a nice and appropriate way that is really just like helping other people understand that you are a worthy, valuable person, that you feel good about yourself, that you have a nice life and are up to interesting things, like even that can feel like sticking your neck out a little bit, that you are opening yourself up to judgment or criticism or rejection, or, they're going to say something crappy about that, right? I think, and I don't know if any of you guys can relate, you may be younger than me, but when I was growing up and like, in high school in the 90s, right, there was, I think almost a cultural thing too, where it was almost like a thing where everybody's pastime, at least in my peer group, was essentially making fun of people who thought that they were all that. Like I think in my generation, there was like, oh, they're selling out, or who do they think that they are? What I think has been really interesting as an observer of younger generations is that there is this freedom to put yourself out there and be like, look at how cool I am and all these amazing things that I'm doing. And like, I think that sometimes that's why I still to this day struggle with social media a little bit. There's a voice in the back of my head that's like, who cares? Nobody cares. Why would you share this? But it's cool to see younger people be like, amazing. So, good for you. But there are other roots here, I think, aside from culturally, the way, we were socialized, I think, to not, be too big. I do think that low self-esteem, like if you struggle with low self-esteem or low self-worth in general, it will also show up in this way because your mental narrative will kind of be putting you down before anybody else can do it for you. And this can also show up like, sometimes you can experience this in different environments. Like if you tend to struggle with imposter syndrome, like on the job, maybe, like maybe in some parts of your life, you feel more confident and like you can put yourself out there. But in others, you may try to make yourself feel a little bit smaller. But certainly like cultural and societal conditioning, I think, and I don't want to overgeneralize and certainly not like gender this too much because many men, non-binary, trans, I mean, like everybody struggles with this. But I think that to a degree, women, female identifying people have been socialized to not like be too amazing, that we have judgments about women who do that we can absorb to our detriment. So there's something there too. Okay, so these are just some of the reasons why we can start to play small and put ourselves down. But there are also a lot of different things that we can do in order to help ourselves with this. But before we move on to that, I'm also just curious to know, I mean, I mentioned a lot of things. Did any of you guys relate to what I was saying? Like when I was talking about, maybe critical parents or being worried about, I don't know, being rejected or ridiculed by other people if you put yourself out there too much, or maybe it's something else for you. If anybody would share, I would love to hear like what resonated for you, or if you have like a different orientation to this. Is there something that you experience related to a tendency to kind of diminish yourself, make yourself small that maybe I didn't mention, but that might be really helpful for somebody in our community here to see? Oh, Becca, awesome. Thank you. Fear of rejection for me. Yeah, me too. Or fear of feedback because of not having that self-confidence. Got it. Like, so if somebody were to give you some negative feedback or like saying something nasty about what you're trying to do, it would kind of like take the wind out of your sails, like that kind of thing. Yeah. So awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Who else? Does anybody else have something where this is coming up? I'd love to know. Or maybe we covered it. Okay. Well, then let's move on to talk about some of the reasons why we can. Oh, wait. I think I have a little bit of a delay in some of the things that I'm saying and what is beaming out there. So, Emily shared, okay, yeah, like an aversion to others paying too close of attention to me. I can relate to growing up as a child that was too much for my parents, like wanting too much attention. I totally get that. Yeah, like I think that I can relate to that too, like kind of wanting to fly under the radar a little bit, like not really wanting people to pay that much attention to me. But I also totally get that, like feeling like you were too much, like too out there when you were a kid, that your natural personality was excited and active and outgoing and interested and curious, I bet, and enthusiastic. And yeah, you know what? A lot of kids have that squashed, and they feel like there's something wrong with them for being the way that they are, that makes them feel like, that primal wound level of rejection. If I put myself out there, if I, am too much, then love will be withheld, or I will be rejected and criticized by the most important people in the world, like my attachment figures, right? So like that goes deep. And I also just want you to know I have heard that from a bunch of different people just as a therapist over the years. That is something that a lot of people struggle with. So I just want you to feel seen right there. And I think, for you parents out there, and this is also something that I deal with too, like as a parent, my son is calm, kind of quiet, and my daughter is very exuberant. She is extremely active, and she is curious, and she is brave, and she is fearless, and she's like, rah, like she has one of those personalities. And sometimes as a parent, I'm like, can you just like stop, like calm down? But like I have to stop myself, and it's those conversations with my clients that come ringing through my head, like I don't want to break her spirit. Like I don't want her to feel like there's something wrong with her for being courageous and excited and curious and having a lot of energy, because that's literally who she is. And I am of the belief that we need more fierce women in the world. So, but I do want to empathize with parents that it's also hard to like make space for that because it's not exactly convenient. So, and these are some other great comments. So thank you so much for bringing this one up. When you need to confront someone about something and they are a bit dominant, is feeling apprehension, that sense of like, oh, this is going to turn into a fight kind of thing. I get it. Okay. So let's just do a couple of quick general tips for like how to stop diminishing ourselves in general, but then let's tackle your questions. And so if you're listening to this and thinking about a situation in your life, or like how do I shift this for me personally? I would love to hear about it so that we can talk about it. So I think the very first and most important thing here, and I did a deeper dive into this on Monday's podcast if you want to get like all the details, but truly is first just simply recognizing that this is something that we do. I did not have visibility into this in myself. I just, was like, I have a self-deprecating sense of humor. No, actually, you are really playing small. You are hiding in a lot of ways. But I don't think it was until I made that cognitive connection that I was like, yeah, maybe I should work on this. And so self-awareness is always the very first step, because until we are self-aware, we can't change anything. So that is always the most important thing. And you can get into this by, feedback from other people, journaling, talking to a good therapist or a coach, listening to stuff like this, honestly, and just, thinking about what you identify with can just help you get visibility into the way that you operate. But then also, once we are in that place of self-awareness, the next step of this is to get very clear about the limiting beliefs that may be so automatic that they are subconscious, but they are there. And this can be one of the reasons why it can be helpful to talk to a therapist or a coach, because when you are invited to articulate what those core beliefs are, it gives you the opportunity to say them out loud so that you are like, oh yeah, I didn't even realize that I believed that was true, but I do. And then once they're kind of out in the open, you can start to challenge some of those. Like, yes, that is what I was taught when I was a kid. And as an adult, I'm not sure that actually is true. Like, Emily, what you are saying about, feeling like you were too much for your parents, there are limiting beliefs in there. Like, I am too much. If I ask for what I need, put myself out there, allow myself to be amazing, like something bad is going to happen. And you know what? That was true when you were 6. And as an adult, is that still true necessarily? Because I think that makes, you can just begin like almost doing some reality testing around that. And you don't have to talk to a therapist or a coach to do this, obviously. Journaling. Doing some journaling can be really, really helpful to get visibility into this. So, and that could be as simple as I was out last night. I was talking to some people and I noticed myself doing that thing where I was kind of putting myself down or playing myself down or, oh, like it's not that big of a deal. What was that about for me? And just see if you can crack into it, write it out. But the common factor here is actually articulating it, whether you're saying it out loud in words, or if you're writing it down in words. We have to put these thoughts and feelings into language, because before we do that, they're just kind of so nebulous that it's difficult for us to do anything with that. It's fleeting, but it's like when you put things into words, it makes it concrete. And then you can work with it more intentionally to change those beliefs or those mindsets. And that's that third piece is like, okay, so these are the old core beliefs that are leading me to behave this way or to feel this way. This is not serving me this well. So what would I need to be telling myself if I felt more confident in putting myself out there, or that I felt like it was okay to take up a little bit more space in the world and actually have needs and rights and feelings that were just as valuable and important as everybody else? What would I need to be telling myself in order to feel like that was true? So that is typically what that growth work looks like. And I also do want to say that all growth work, like none of this is a switch that gets flipped. And that's why, like with my podcast or even things like this, I always want to just say very directly out loud that this is a growth process and it is not just informational. Like nobody's going to hear me say something and be like, oh, great. Yes, I'm totally done. I'm over that now. It's like information is a part of it, like learning how these things change. But I think it is actually in doing the work. The doing of the work is not informational. It is experiential, and it happens over time. It is doing things differently, feeling things differently, and like evolving on a deeper level from the inside out. And so I just wanted to say that because sometimes I worry, we're in such an informational age, like everybody has so much great advice and follow these 3 easy steps to perfection or whatever it is. And I always worry that people, or that that I've felt this way too, like it sounds like it's so simple. Why isn't it working for me? When just in fact, that's not the way that this works. It's a evolutionary process, if you will. So just know that. And in that, I talk about growth mindsets all the time on my podcast and on these live streams. And there's another opportunity for that. And so it is, I am working on this, not that I should be able to do this. So I just wanted to say that out loud. Okay. So those are just a few steps to stop diminishing yourself. There's more on the podcast. And I want to say, and this isn't available yet, so I probably shouldn't even talk about it, but I've been working really hard on some additional free resources for you guys that will just put some things in front of you, like lessons, workbooks that allow you to do more of that experiential process. I'm going to make these free, so don't even sweat that. And I'll share more about it when they're available. I have one that recently launched that I created for couples or for people that are in relationships that can help start to get some of this work happening. It's called Communication That Connects. But I have another one that's going to be coming out soon that is going to be for you, like really working on these more individual growth areas around personal development, personal growth, love, happiness, and success. And so anyway, more on that soon. Okay. So, that's what I have just to kind of set us up for this topic. But I really, really, really want to hear more about what is going on with you, and answer your questions. So how is this showing up in your life? I would love to hear more. And if you have a specific question for me, that is fantastic. And we can also just dialogue. I think one of the cool things that I love so much about these live streams, like I love doing the podcast, and that's a lot of fun for me too. But I think with these live streams, what's so great is like how, just to have like a community forum to talk about some of this stuff, like it normalizes it, like it's not just you, and like your courage in talking about your experience, I think also makes somebody else, like even if it's an observer that is maybe, a little too shy to comment directly, but like it's still benefiting them around, okay, it's not just me, or like hearing me speak to your situation, to your questions could help them too. So this is a collective effort, and I just appreciate you being here. Again, quickly, if you want to submit a question anonymously, I won't read your name and I'll get it right here in real time about this. You can use this link on my website that I put out there to connect with my little chatbot thing. And actually, I can send you this link in the chat right now too. Okay. But otherwise, okay, so let's start tackling some of your questions. So let's go right over here. Oh, wait, no, I have to go over here. So let's talk about this. Here's a fantastic question from Eva. This is super interesting. Eva, this might be one of those where I need a little bit more information to be able to answer this fully. But so Eva asked, what is the difference between self-control and diminishing yourself? And this is interesting. So like, and maybe we have different definitions for the same words. So if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying here, tell me. But when I think of self-control, I think of that being largely positive for the most part. I mean, you can get overboard with self-control too. But when I think of self-control, I think of somebody being really intentional about how they're feeling, and then almost like using really good emotional intelligence skills. I mean, emotional intelligence is not just being really good at talking to people and knowing just what to say, although that can be part of it. But the core of emotional intelligence is having a high degree of self-awareness. How am I feeling right now? And then being able to manage that so that you show up, particularly in relationships or in your behaviors, in the way that you want to, in a way that is congruent with your values and the kind of person that you want to be. And so when I think of self-control, what I often think of is, maybe I'm having all these different feelings, or like I'm saying all these negative things to myself, but because I have self-control, here's what I'm going to do anyway. I am going to show up in my relationships in a positive and productive way. I am going to, eat nutritious foods when maybe I do feel like having a frozen pizza. I mean, like it can look like a lot of different things. And in contrast, when I think of diminishing yourself, I think of that as being a more active form of self-denigration. I mean, there's an active quality to it. You are playing down yourself. You are, almost like criticizing yourself to other people a lot of times, telling other people why you're not that great or why it's not that big of a deal or why, it's okay. It can also, I think, to the points of some comments that we had earlier, really show up in relationships where you are setting your needs, rights, and feelings aside for the benefit of somebody else's. We are prioritizing somebody else's needs, rights, and feelings in a conflict, which I will also say is not necessarily bad. I think that in any healthy, harmonious relationship, we all need to be generous and act with love, and that it is okay to sometimes put other people first, but it needs to be reciprocal. And so I think that what we're talking about today is really more a pattern of self-diminishment, playing small, making our feelings not as important as other people's feelings, hiding our own amazingness, our own accomplishments. There is a time and a place to do all of those in very healthy and positive and socially appropriate ways. It's when it becomes a habitual pattern where you aren't ever really expressing your feelings or asking for what you need or setting boundaries or putting yourself out there with other people. And also, especially when it turns into not just with other people, when it begins to make you feel like you're inhibiting yourself, when you begin to believe that narrative, like it's not that important, it's not that big of a deal, no, I'm not worthy of good things, like whatever it is, that's when it becomes problematic. So I hope that helps illustrate the differences between at least what I think of as being self-control versus self-diminishment, if that is helpful to you. And I want to take a quick look and see if you left any follow-up comments here related to this or if that was helpful. Okay. So, also, I want to make sure that we get to, and I love all these questions coming in on the comments, and we're gonna do as many as we can. And I wanted to mention that I got a couple of really, really great questions in advance through that link that I shared with you guys. So, and if you ever want to do this too, so on Monday's podcast, just pay attention to it. If you follow the Love, Happiness, and Success podcast, I'll be talking about it, and also trying to get better at like posting things online. Like, this is what we're going to be talking about this week, although social media is still very much a work in progress for me. So thank you for your patience with me there. But anyway, so you can submit questions in advance on that topic, but also like submit questions in general, because every week as I'm preparing for these, I'm like looking through all the questions that I received and thinking like, oh, that would be a really good question for today's topic. So here we go. I wanted to speak to a question that came in, which is, it's actually a two-part question. So first of all, how can I overcome my innate fear response that I will receive negative feedback when I need to state a boundary or a need? Woo, okay. So what you're saying is that when you either say or want to say that you need something, want something, or that's not okay, that there's going to be like a lot of, so when I hear negative feedbacks, like criticism, rejection, somebody being mean to you, like that you'll be punished a little bit for doing that, if that is about right. So, okay. So that honestly makes me wonder, and I'm putting my therapist hat on, is like, we were talking about earlier, going back to more historical life experiences, is that was actually your experience, particularly when you were a kid. And it could have been potentially with a parent. It could have been with peers. I mean, like, our parents aren't actually responsible for everything about our psychology, right? Or we can, get feedback from educational systems or society in general, right? But if I were your therapist, which I am not, I would be very curious to explore more about times in your life when you found that to literally be true. Because the way that you describe that experience, like this innate fear response, like and I don't want to overinflate this, but like it sounds like a little bit of a trauma response, that you have had legitimately bad experiences when you did this in the past, and that the body keeps the score, right? And there can be big T traumas like PTSD that is very intense. And there are also little t traumas that can be caused by these kinds of interactions with other people. So, in order to work through this, there are a couple of different paths here. You could take a therapy route, or even like a journaling route. But the way that this works when you manage any kind of trauma in therapy, there's an exposure quality. So again, therapy is experiential. It is not informational. And so if you are working with a therapist, it might be going back in to some of these old memories and kind of going through them a few times. And as you do, it's weird, I mean, again, it's not informational. It's not something that you can just make happen, but that as you reprocess these, it actually takes some of the energy out of it, so that when you are out in the world and in this situation, you will feel less reactive because of that work that you have done. That is not, it's a little bit magic. It doesn't totally, I mean, it's not magic. There are neurological reasons for this. So that would be door number one. Door number two, you could also explore some of the techniques that come to us from a particular kind of therapy that is really helpful, called acceptance and commitment therapy. If you look online, there are books on the subject. You can find workbooks on acceptance and commitment therapy. But essentially, the way that it works, again, we started with self-awareness, like that this is a thing that you do, and then creating a lot of clarity around how you want to respond to those moments differently. So how you want to show up, how you want to feel, and what kinds of supporting self-statements would allow that to happen. So it's that inner work, you're getting a lot of clarity. But then there is a very cool like mindfulness component to this, and a lot of radical acceptance, to be completely honest, because when you are in the world and you are in a situation when you have a need or you need to set a boundary, you can expect that you are going to have that like negative, that anticipation, right? But because of that work, you will be able to say in the moment and be like, I'm having that trauma response. This is what I do. And I am going to behave the way that I know I want to behave, even if I am having this feeling. So acceptance and commitment therapy. We accept the way that we feel without judgment, but we are committed to showing up as the people that we want to be nonetheless. So I think the big piece of this is that you can have these feelings for good reasons and still state a need or set a boundary. I think the thing that would change is this expectation that you have of yourself that you shouldn't feel that way, or that if you do feel that way, you can't state a need or set a boundary. I hope that makes sense. And I'll be interested to hear your feedback, or if there are any other facets of that question that we need to explore. And this was just like such a fantastic, rich question. There was actually a 2-part question. So I'm going to keep going with this. And then I promise I'm going to get to some of these other amazing questions in the comments. But part 2 of this question is that you have a belief that you are a failure. The question, I have a belief that I am a failure and that I can't take up space. So I act very cautious. I wait for others, like my partner, to guide me and my decisions. And this makes our relationship uneven because he ends up having to guide us like a parent-child. That's also a tough one. How can I be more confident and act even if I make a mistake? Because some action is better than none. And so again, I think I am hearing the energetic echoes of early life experiences that taught you that you were a failure and that it's not okay to take up space, that has led you to question your own judgment, and that you are waiting for other people to make decisions for you, to the point that as an adult in a relationship, that dynamic is happening. And that while in some ways that feels safer for you, it also is creating an unbalanced relationship, obviously. And I could see how it makes up, it could create problems in a relationship because of that. So your big question here is like, how can I be more confident and act even if I make a mistake, because some action is better than none? And I think there are two pieces of this. Again, I do believe that acceptance and commitment type model. And if you're not in a relationship with a good therapist, ideally one who practices this modality, I think that this could be really, really helpful for you. But it is going into, okay, this is what I do for all of these good reasons. And so I'm not going to shame myself for being the way that I am, because like there is a reason for that. So lots of self-compassion, but also that self-awareness, and then getting a lot of visibility into, so in these moments when I am giving away my power to another person because I'm worried about making a mistake or being criticized, let's slow that down. You know, what am I telling myself in these moments? What does that make me do? And what do I want to be saying or doing differently in those moments? And I am going to start practicing that in very small ways. And I am going to feel incredibly uncomfortable when I do it because this is new. But the doing of the work, which is experiential, is like that practice. You know, the first time you exercise or go skiing or something, you come home and everything's all sore and you're like, oh, that was awful. And this is going to be a little bit like that, right? It is how we exercise that, and it is through taking action that growth and change internally happen. And like, you know, I've talked about this a lot on the live stream and podcast before, and what I actually talk a lot about to therapists that I teach and that I supervise. So, I'm going to take a second and toot my own horn again. I recently received my certification credentialing for being an AAMFT approved clinical supervisor of other therapists. It took me 3 years and many thousands of dollars to do, and I have told that to hardly anybody yet, but I'm telling it to you today because I'm working on this too. So anyway, but like with the therapists that I teach and supervise, we talk a lot about some of the limitations of traditional talk therapy, which is all about the talking, right? And in contrast, moving into a more active growth model that can be more in alignment with coaching psychology, which is showing us that it is through the doing of the things that we actually learn and change and grow. And so I see that being part of your process here. And then also, I have talked about this book many times before, but here's another reason for us to do it. Oh, where is it? This is, and my camera, oh, no, it isn't. This book right here has like coffee all over it. I've read this 9 times. I made my kid read this book because I'm that kind of mom. The book is called Mindset. The author is Carol Dweck. And this book is all about exactly what you are saying, which is the part about making it okay to make a mistake. Like somewhere along the way, you internalized core beliefs that it was not okay to do that. And the idea behind a growth mindset is getting really, really comfy with the developmental process that is required for all of us with literally everything that we don't know how to do yet, which is going and trying something and then learning from that experience and very deliberately letting go of any expectation that we should be even a little bit competent at this at first, let alone good. And instead really embrace that process of trying things, making mistakes, learning from all of it, developing a growth mindset that shows us that we over time develop and grow into the kinds of people who can start to feel more confident and who can make good decisions and who can trust their own judgment, because I think that I'm hearing that there's a lot of that here. So amazing question. And oh my gosh, I have been talking about this rich, juicy question for so long. I do want to answer some other questions today because there are just so many awesome ones coming in. Okay, so thank you, Wayne, for bringing up this question. When is it okay to just accept that this is part of my personality, or if it's something that I should change? This is such an awesome question. I love this so much. And I think that there's an easy answer for this. If it is just who you are, to be kind of self-deprecating, not this big flamboyant, like, look at me kind of person. Like, yeah, that's you. And I bet people love you for that, right? And I bet you're a great friend. And, I think that there's something to be said for quiet humility being kind of cool. I think that when it is something that you should consider changing is this causing problems for you and your life? Are you missing out on opportunities because other people, like what I was talking about with my networking events, like mingling with other people, with like, that is why we were there, is like to build relationships with other people and, business owners, and like to help each other. Like, I mean, they would have left that thinking like, how did she get in here? Do you know what I mean? And that was to my detriment. Or if you have internalized messages of smallness that make you feel small so that you want to do more in the world, but you feel like you can't, or that you don't have the right to do that, or that you're having a hard time asserting yourself in relationships, or feeling like it's okay to take up space in a way that feels like it is harming you. So if you are having a good time, Godspeed. Don't change a thing. It's great. If though you're like, this is actually causing problems for me, that is when it's worth taking a closer look and thinking about making some changes. So awesome question. I hope that helps. Okay, let's see. What else do we have here? Okay, here's a super question. How to fight your internal struggle? Are they limiting beliefs, or are you just being realistic that you've just started? Okay, no, I get that. What you're saying is, how do you tell the difference between an unhelpful thought that is to your detriment, that is limiting you, versus operating in reality, like actually operating in reality? And I think that this is a really good question and a very worthy one. With my therapy and coaching clients, we talk about this a lot because it can be so hard to tell, especially, I think, from the inside out, like when we're all just sort of marinating in our own thoughts. It can be very difficult to differentiate. And so what you're saying is, that self-limiting judgment versus a reality-based idea. And so I think the easiest, well, not easiest, but some of the ways to crack into this are honestly, either through talking to a therapist or a coach who can actively be challenging some of this. Like, that is a lot of what we do as therapists. So like, you might be talking about some of these beliefs that you have, in a way that you don't usually talk about with other people. I mean, these are very vulnerable, emotionally intimate conversations, right? But to have somebody who is an emotionally safe person who you trust to be able to say, I hear that this is a belief for you, but I'm not sure that that's completely accurate, because from my perspective, these things are also true. That is one of the main experiential benefits of therapy or coaching, is to have somebody, with a flashlight shining a blind spot on things that you didn't know were false beliefs. I work with a coach personally, and I love that when he's like, actually, I am not sure that is true, Lisa. Like, I'm like, thank you for telling me, right? Because how else are we going to know? I do think that to a degree, you can also crack into this with journaling. And the exercise that I would prescribe for this is to, if you are grappling with one of these thoughts and trying to figure out if it's reality based or if it is a self-limiting belief, like just give yourself space to brainstorm. What are all of the things that are true about this situation or, thing that I'm thinking about or beliefs about myself even? Because when we can get into that, what you will find is that with literally everything, including you, there are many, many, many different, sometimes diametrically opposed things and ideas that are all simultaneously true. They may be contradictory even, and yet they are still all true. And so when we can go into the gray and tap into all of the different ideas that are all true or plausible about a certain situation, then you can look at everything on that page and with a critical eye think of these beliefs. If these are all if these are all simultaneously true, which ones of these make me feel better? Because you do get to write your own story. You know what I mean? Like, you get to decide what is actually your truth, and you have a lot of different options. And so if there are beliefs that, might be reality-based, and there are other things that might also be true that are also reality-based, you get to choose the one that makes you feel best, that opens up the doors for you, that makes you feel stronger and more confident and more empowered and more like it is okay to keep growing and being amazing, because that's what this is all about. So that would be my suggestion for you. And I hope that that's helpful. Okay, so I have just a couple more minutes, and I have one more question that I really did want to get to today. And this is from somebody who also got in touch in advance. So let's come over here, and I'm going to read this anonymous question. And this is from somebody maybe similar a little bit to the last question. It is, how do I discern if I'm making a fear-based decision? And so this writer shared, I run my own small business, which is still very new. It's about 2 years old. And I'm often faced with so many options and so much advice from various directions. I feel like there's so much information out there to be distracted by, so many coaches and experts giving advice. I've signed up for lots of business classes and coaching over the years that I shouldn't have had any business signing up for. And I feel like I do this because I'm afraid, I have imposter syndrome. And how would you recommend breaking out of this pattern? And so the reason why I wanted to address this listener question for this topic is because when I read it, it seemed to me like it is in that same wheelhouse of playing small. Like the other question that we were just talking about, that person who felt like they needed to look to their partner to make all the major life decisions and like run the show. This to me feels like another example of someone who has given their power away to other people. They are putting the judgment of other people, the ideas of other people, the expertise of other people above their own, to her detriment or their detriment. And so I just wanted to illuminate that there are many ways of playing small. And I have also done this over the years. And I think a couple different ways of looking at it. Like one of my personality strengths, like when I take the Strengths Finder assessments, is learning. So I am a lifelong learner and I am a student. I love learning about things from other people or from books. I mean, like that's what I do. And that's, I think, why I love, doing the podcast, is that I also like to teach, right? So that's something that's great. And I do believe that there is a space for healthy humility that says, I don't know everything about everything, and that there are a lot of really smart people in the world who have done a lot of cool research and who are more experienced than I am. And how can I learn from them? Like, that's really cool. But there also comes a point where that needs to transition into trust in your own judgment, to be able to have a core narrative that says, I have actually been running this business for about 2 years now, and I do know some things, or maybe like synthesize through all the things that you've learned about in your educational journey, but to be able to say, so what do I believe is the right course of action here? That is another way that we can make ourselves big, is to stop being other referenced, like I need to look to other people to tell me what to do or how to think, and to begin to tap into, what do I think? What do I believe? What do I know to be true? And practice trusting yourself and listening to yourself and respecting your own judgment just as much as those of other people. And that's just a mindset shift. And you'll probably notice this tendency to be like, oh, I don't know what to do. Who do I ask? Versus, oh, let me just think through that a little bit. Maybe I do know what to do. And allowing yourself to experience your strength and intelligence and expertise, because I bet it's there. Okay. You guys, this was so much fun. I loved this. I have another meeting that I have to jump into, but thank you so much for attending this live stream with me today. I love doing this with you. I will be around the next couple of Thursdays. You can check out the socials for what we're going to be talking about. I think that, I don't want to say the wrong thing for next week. I'll double check this. But anyway, you can ask questions in advance if you would ever like to. Here, I'll put that link back up for you. And I shared it. Here, I'll put this back again. Oh, and wait, before we end, I promised you a free resource. So one of the things that I have for you, if you come to my website, growingself.com, here, I'll show you this. Come to growingself.com. I have in my free resources section, this quiz on how healthy is your self-esteem that taps into a lot of the things that we have been talking about today. It's totally free. It'll ask you a bunch of questions because I do think that there is a correlation between this tendency to play small and self-esteem work that we do. And so you can take this assessment. It will provide like a free report that shows you your scores and different like dimensions of self-esteem, and will also provide more recommendations and some exercises and some things that you can do in order to change this. And of course, if you would like to do some of this experiential growth work that we've been talking about today, you're welcome to come to Growing Self and, have a free consultation meeting with one of the therapists/coaches on my team who are ready to do some of this work with you. Okay, so thank you again for hanging out, and I will be back in touch next week. Okay, take care.